So in the demonstration, I'll touch on safety. I'll talk about how I prepare the materials, and then I'll turn the projects and I'll go through the tools and techniques I use to create this project. I've made these before in many different shapes. I'm not sure. I think we might have had a demonstration on something similar, but not exactly the same. It's the upside down salt shakers. Now, I've made them in many different shapes. I like to make them into things or make them into shapes like functional shapes or faux shapes. So I've made them before in different boxes or different style boxes I make. I normally do them in two color contrasting woods, so one can be pepper and one can be salt. Okay, I'll go through the techniques of how I turn these, both spindle turning, finial turning, and end-grain hollowing turning, and all the tools and techniques I use to turn these projects. But what I'm going to turn, well, I have a couple options. I can turn either a box or two of these, depending on time. Or one thing I came up with, after I thought of this and made a couple of them, I saw them on YouTube. And there's a guy called Tomislav Thomas.
Yep.
And he's out of Croatia. And he makes pears and apples. And they're also the salt shakers. Now, last week, my wife and I, we were talking, and it's almost the end of the year, and we were trying to brainstorm ideas for teacher gifts. And I'm like, oh yeah, I thought about it months ago, and I thought maybe I'll make an apple box. But there's only 2 weeks left until the end of school. So I was like, oh well, that timeline ain't gonna work because I got production work and other work and demos I have to get done before those boxes. So I made a couple of these and I thought these were good, quick, easy to finish. They don't have to have a shiny finish. They just have a matte wax finish. So they're quick and easy to make. So these are actually going to be my son's teacher's end of the year teacher gift. Okay.
Nice.
This is Pau Amarillo, also yellow heart. This is regular maple, and the stems are African blackwood. That's one pair for the ECE, and here's the other pair for the teachers. So I have these projects finished, waxed, and ready to be packaged for the end of school. I'm not stressing about creating a box and getting my signature shiny finish on the piece before I package it and send it to them. Okay, so this is what we can do. Or if you would like to see the two different boxes, we could do that too. I almost like the pear and the apple a little better. But
yeah, let's do the pear and apple. Let's do
pear and apple. All right.
Yeah.
And as we do in wood turning, we still always incorporate the golden rule. So the boxes have a golden ratio, as well as the pears and apples have a golden ratio. You can see the bottom curve is at the 1/3 to the 2/3 or the 3/3 of the overall piece. The top curve of the apple is 1/3 of the 3/3 of the overall piece. So we can incorporate the golden rule and ratio into different things to make them a little more aesthetically pleasing. So we'll go with these. I'll also turn the stem, and I have a cool little jig that I sand these on the lathe. So we'll go through that as well. Okay.
You got and Kade, you got plenty of time, so don't feel like you're rushed or you're up against the time hour or anything like that. So you're good to go. All right.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. Yeah. So to prepare the materials, I prepared the Pau Amarillo. I bought a piece of this, and I think it was 24 inches long. So I cut 3 3-inch pieces, 2 2.5, and 1 2.75, and that gave me my 24 inches. Okay. So I got 3 of these out of the one piece. This one was the offcut, so it's 2.75 inches in length. and they're 2 inches square, 2-inch by 2-inch square. Okay. The maple was cut on my bandsaw from rough cut lumber. Maple's not as pricey or as precious as an exotic, nicely colored wood. So I cut these to roughly 3-inch by 2 by 2. Okay. I've already found my centers to save a little bit of time. I prepare my material on the bandsaw. So I find my centers on all 4 corners, split the difference, mark it with an awl after all, and it's quite easy to just find those holes and it's less of a balancing act trying to keep this centered on that pin and this centered while I bring up tailstock support. Okay. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to rough turn all these round with a 2-inch tenon. Now, on that note, I can touch on safety quickly. I don't want to harp on safety too much because at the end of the day, we're all responsible for our own safety. So at the end of the day, you take the precautions you see fit to stay safe, have fun, and enjoy wood turning as safe as you can. Okay. Wood turning, like any power tool or machinery, can be a dangerous hobby or profession. So it's nice to take certain safety precautions to try and keep all our appendages, keep our face, and keep ourselves in good, healthy working order. Okay. Bare minimum, I recommend safety glasses. Protect your eyes. You only get 2, no replacements. I also like to protect my ears, so I get custom earplugs made at my hearing clinic where they do audio testing. These are rated for military gunfire, so I use them at the gun range as well. But they're so comfortable, I can wear them all day, turn all day, and they don't hurt my ears. But also when I go on a hunting trip, and you know there's always one person that snores like a banshee and keeps the whole cabin awake, I put these in my ears and I sleep comfortably, and I don't want to put the pillow over the guy keeping everybody awake. Okay.
Yeah.
I also recommend a full face shield, something that will take an impact if something comes off the lathe. Not those cheap little yellow ones you get at Home Depot or Home Hardware. You want something with a frame in it that will take an impact and at least protect your face from the initial hit. Okay. Now, you might still feel the hit depending on the speed and the weight of the piece, but you won't need stitches. You won't be cut up. You won't be disfigured. You just might have something broken. Okay. Now, I admit I don't always wear that, especially in small turning, spindle turning, but I do always wear that in live edge turning, thin bowl turning, multi-access turning, and really crazy big sculptural thin turnings. Okay. Take the safety precautions you see fit to wear what you desire. I also recommend a respirator if you're in a confined area. Dust lungs don't mix. The leading cause of mesothelioma is wood dust in woodworkers and wood turners. So protect your lungs. Okay. Any rings, watches, bracelets, I take them off so I don't get pulled into the lathe. I prefer short sleeves so I don't have loose clothing, again, that can pull me into the lathe. I also wear closed-toed shoes, okay? I don't recommend turning in sandals, flip-flops, Crocs, because even a piece like this, 3-inch by 3-inch, 3-inch by 2-inch by 2-inch, if that falls off my bedway, which is about 4 feet off the ground, that can do some damage to those tiny bones in your feet. Let alone if you rest your skew on the lathe and it rocks off, it falls down like this. That can do some damage to the tiny bones in your feet. Okay. So I recommend closed-toed shoes for anything under 10 pounds and steel-toe shoes, anything over 10 pounds. Okay. That's it for safety. End of the day, We're all responsible for our own safety, so do as you see fit. Okay? Now let's make a mess. I'll start off just by turning these all round with a tenon. I will be wearing earplugs, but if you have a question near and dear to exactly what I'm doing at that second, feel free to unmute yourself, ask the question. If you can wait 5 minutes, whenever I grab a different tool, change chucks, grab something else, or check my cameras or something, I will always ask, are there questions? And that is a great time to ask all your questions.
Okay. In fact, that's when anybody wants to ask a question. It'll be while you're not turning. Otherwise, put it in the chat, folks.
Yep, that's a good way to do it too, because then when I'm not talking, they can be referred to me by a moderator, so everybody is not unmuting at once.
Correct.
All right, people ask me what speed I turn at. I'll tell you, I'm turning at 2,800 RPMs. If that is too fast for you in your comfort zone, turn at a speed you feel comfortable turning at. My tool rest is slightly below center. I'm cutting at center with a roughing gouge. And I am just making this round. There we are. If you don't want to check it with your hand because you feel that maybe, don't do it. You can always rest your tool on top, and if it's gliding on the skis, it's round. I make a tenon to be held in my chuck. Now, to grab anything off the lathe or move your tool rest, it is a great idea to shut the lathe off first. Production turners don't always do that. They will move the tool rest while the lathe is running, and sometimes they will unload and load the lathe while it is running, but they have a lot of experience with that. And if there is an accident, they own it because it's their fault. Over here. See how quick and easy it is to load these on and off the lathe with my little hole that I made with my awl. It would be quite a balancing act if you don't do that, and you have to balance it on one point to find the next point. There's also a production turner in the UK, Gary Rance. He makes these salt shakers into bells, which are quite cool as well. You can make them virtually into any shape. It's great practice and great skill building for your tool control and presentation. There we are. Now I have my Palrosa blanks prepared and my maple blanks prepared. Okay. We'll do the pear first. You can do either one first. I've just always turned the pear before the apple. My rule of thumb when I put my chuck on, I don't hold the back wheel and turn the chuck on because I might be off slightly and I can ruin the threads of my spindle, my chuck adapter, or my chuck. Okay? I hold this stationary, supported by my tool rest, my wrists, and I turn that wheel, finds the threads perfectly, and then I seat the piece with a quick little snap. Okay? My rule of thumb with chuck keys, if that chuck key is in the chuck, my hand never comes off that chuck key. Okay? Until it is back on my workbench, or many things and tools are attached to my lathe by rare earth magnets. So when I'm production turning, it's quick and easy to find many different things. Okay? I have an awl here, pencil sharpener, light bars, all kinds of fun stuff. The main thing is you don't want to forget that there. Get doing something and start the lathe, because that is a projectile that could do a lot of damage. It can also come around, hit your tool rest, break your tool rest, break your chuck key, break your chuck, damage your spindle, damage your motor, your belts, your pulleys. It could be a very expensive fix. Or, in USA, a very expensive health bill. Okay? Those who don't know me, my name's Kade Bolger. I'm a full-time woodturner, teacher, and demonstrator, and I'm located just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I like to give that a little quarter turn to make sure that's seated in the jaws, and I tighten my chuck. Both holes. There we are. Another thing that is beneficial when you're turning is to have light. It's safer when we can see what we're doing. Then we're not guessing.
We were just commenting about that here in the chat, Kate, about a bunch of us that bought those lights because of you.
Yep. I'll turn this light off so there's less shadows behind me.
They work really good, folks, and they're inexpensive on Amazon.
Yeah, these are the light bars I use. I was doing some dye and I had it on my bedway and I went to pick it up and I jostled it and bumbled it and spilt yellow paint all over my lights. But they still work. So these you can get on Amazon. They're 32 LED light bars. They come with a remote control. They have different settings of on, off, increments of 50 to 100. Also have timers. Unfortunately, my batteries have died in my remote controls, so I only have the on option. Okay. But they are fairly inexpensive on Amazon. You can buy them in a pack of 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever you like. Okay. When I was in England last October, I did a tour for a month. 3 weeks in England, 1 week in Scotland. And the only thing I forgot was my lights. So my first demo, I felt blind because I had no light. But then that night, I messaged the next destination I was going to be at probably 3 days later, and I asked them to order some on Amazon. And they arrived the same day I arrived, so I had light for my demo.
Are they battery powered, Kade?
Yes,
This will
they're
be the curve
USB.
of my Pear. This will be the top of my Pear. This excess wood will be used for a jam chuck. Yes, they are rechargeable. They're USB chargeable. And it takes them no time to charge. So I used my roughing gouge to rest below center with my tool cutting at center. Now I'm using the skew. So I move my tool rest up slightly so I'm cutting above center at 11 o'clock. Whoop. Don't do that. I accidentally dropped my toe into the piece as I was cutting with the heel. That's okay. It'll just be a little smaller.
All good.
I was coming along here as I came around the curve. I caught the toe on the upper curve, so it kicked, hit, and chipped.
What we call demoitis.
I'll try this again. Hey, before I go too thin here, I want to hollow out the inside. And then I will shape the rest of my pear. Here. Here.
or
Haven't
the
done
length
that
for
in
the
a
light.
long time. I just got
Oh, it's a good
overzealous.
learning. It's a good learning moment for for the folks here, and especially the new ones, or folks that are new to turning, see how it does happen and happens to everybody, and this is how you recover from it.
All right, so now I'll switch to this camera. And we are going to hollow this piece. First thing I'm going to do is come across with my spindle gouge here. It is a different type of skew shape. It's a slight radius curve skew, and I will talk about that in a sec. Right after I hollow this. I'm coming across the end grain with my spindle gouge facing the surface, slightly concave. Okay. All right, before I go too far, I'll talk quickly about the skew, the different skews. This is your traditional style skew. Actually, switch. There we are. Where we have a 70-degree angle from the toe to the heel. We have a 25-degree angle on either side of the bevel. This is a curve skew, or a skew with a slight radius. Okay? It's still 70 degrees, and it's still 25-degree bevel on either side. This is sharpened freehand on my grinder, and I basically sweep it from one edge to the other edge, and I roll that sharp corner off the point. Now the toe is still higher than the heel. Now, why would I do that, you may ask, is it has some benefits, but it does also have some drawbacks. It's more forgiving some ways, but less forgiving in other ways. Okay? They're both used the exact same way, where I stay in that bottom third when I'm doing a planing cut in this direction, or a planing cut in this direction, or a planing cut in this direction, or a planing cut in this direction. They're all used the exact same way, cutting in that bottom third. You can creep up halfway, but if you go halfway, past halfway, you're not supported by the tool rest to make that cut up here, and that's what exactly happened here. That cut went into an area where it wasn't directly supported, caught that edge, flipped it down into the wood until it relieved out of that catch. Okay? So, what would the benefit be? The benefit to this would be when I'm doing a bead and I'm coming around that bead, it's easier and less likely to scallop that point into the opposing bead as I come around that corner to make that union in between those two beads by it being swept back. It's also beneficial because if I use it as a scraper, like a negative rake scraper, a skew is also a glorified negative rake scraper if you use it flat on the tool rest. Okay? So why would I use that as a scraper? If I'm doing a box and I want a very sharp corner or a flat bottom box, I can scrape in with this. I can come across the bottom and create a nice sharp corner with a flat bottom box. But the downside of this is when I get into that corner, I'm bound on this edge, and that point, and it will be a very bad catch. Okay? But if I use this as a negative rake scraper and I go into that box, I don't have that point at that edge. It's less likely to be grippy, grabby, and catchy because I'm on this part and this part I'm not buried into the wood on that corner anymore. Okay. But also, so that's the benefit of this type of askew. Now, the downside of this type of askew is if I don't enter perfectly into my entry cut or my V cut, you get a skate away because of that swept back curve. It's not as straight and it doesn't keep it there as easily as your straight-sided sharp edge skew. Okay. Now, this is what I teach in my wood turning 101 classes. It's half inch skew. But this is what I prefer in my everyday use and production of a skew. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Or
it
give more
does.
insight to the type of the skew and why I use it?
Yep, you got a resounding thank you.
Perfect. All right. So now I need to make my entry with a little bit of a lip. Enter in just to make a ledge for my inner piece to sit. And I go in maybe 3/32 or 1/8 of an inch. Okay. And beside that, I go in again. I need a smaller ledge and a smaller opening, or a smaller ledge and a larger opening. Okay. Now, one thing I do want to do here is I want to rough shape this so I know where I need to start and stop. Is that looking okay on your end, or is there a bit of a halo?
No, it looks fine.
Looks
Oh, good.
good? All right.
Yeah.
So I just want to get a rough shape so I know how deep I can go. But I do not want to go too thin because I will get more vibration when I hollow. Okay. Now I switch to my 3/8 bowl gouge. I like a really long swept back Irish grind style wing. My flute is roughly at a 45 degree. The flute is pointing in the direction I am cutting. Now you can drill out the center if you like. I find it's just as fast to hollow it rather than mess around with a tailstock and a drill chuck. See how tight that hole is. If you can't fit your finger in it, pick a different finger. If you don't want to put your finger in there because it might be too dangerous or nerve-wracking for you, don't do it. Eyeball it. Or get calipers to check your wall thickness.
Or if you don't want a finger, make the hole tighter.
That feels good. I undercut that slightly. If I want to see the depth, it's always good to use the depth gauge because we're making items or bowls or boxes. We're not making funnels. I've seen a lot of fancy ones out there. I get mine at the dollar store. I stick that in the center. I line up one edge with the other, mark it with my nail, and I know I'm that deep into the piece. Okay? You can also use a depth gauge if you want a very accurate measurement. I'm in about an inch. Okay? I can go a little deeper. I'll go probably another 1/4 inch or so. There you go. Now, one thing I also like to do is create a little bit of a dimple in the top. I'm happy with that. I want a little bit more of a curve at the top so the salt can reach in there, reach to the dimple. I'll show you the dimple when I take this off. The dimple just allows that salt to get up in that small cavity so it can drop down in the funnel a little easier. There we are. I'm happy with that. Get my eraser out, get rid of that pencil line. There we are. I'm happy with that. And then I part this off. Before I part this off, I want to do a light sand with, since I use the skew, I start with 320 and I finish with 320. At this time, I can also add my wax if I like. And for these, I use Osmo top oil. Put a little bit on the rag. A little goes a long way. I don't put it on the inside. And I take the clean part. I wipe off the excess. And I part through with my thin kerf parting tool. My tool rest overhang is a little too far. So I will move that so the leverage stays in my favor. All right. There we have our pear shape so far. There's the inside, and you can see a little bit of a dimple crevice in the very center. It might be an eighth lower than the top curve. That way, when you shake it like this, the salt comes up into the funnel and onto your food. Okay?
There you go.
Now I need to make a jam chuck. To do the inside. Or to do the top of my pear. Not quite. I can round this. Then I can see where I'm hitting on that inner edge. There we go. Okay, I just need to straighten that. That's a little loose, but that's okay. I have a problem solver for that. Okay. One thing you can do is you could use paper towel. You could do a plastic bag. Some can say I did that on purpose so I can show you this little hack. Others will say, oh, well, you made a mistake. Could be either or, but it is a good opportunity to show you how I would fix that without having to turn a whole new jam chuck. Okay. You know those reusable bags? We always go to the grocery store. We buy groceries. We can't use plastic, so we buy the reusable bags. We have so many of them lying around our house, and we always forget to take them. when we go grocery shopping, so we have to get more. We have such an abundance of these, I cut them into strips. You might remember that blue. I put that over top. That gives it enough hold for my jam chuck. Okay, problem solved. You can also use paper towel. You could use anything really. You want it a little tighter, which I kind of do. You take another one. You're worried about those pieces of fabric flopping around? You can cut them off. I have so many of them lying around my house, I'm not worried about reusing them. I also want my tool rest as close as possible, just over that top edge, that bottom edge, sorry. So if this starts to feed its way out, it's going to hit my tool rest before it comes flying through the air and hits me in the mouth. Okay, but that's why we wear our face shield, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to round this and hollow the inside slightly. I'm going to stabilize this with my hand. And I am using my spindle gouge one-handed. Okay? I have it referenced against my forearm and my finger for support. There we are. Hollow this out slightly, ever so gently. That moves slightly. I just want to reseat it so I don't have anything whipping around on me. Whoop. Serious. That jumped a bit too.
It's trying to bounce on you.
You can bring up tailstock support if you like. Just can't get in there that easily. That's okay. I just want to fix this curve because that little jump created a little mark on the top of that curve. I don't know if you can see it right there. So we're going to fix that with tailstock support. And I'm going to go around that with my skew. Over here, it's fixed. I can go in with my toe slightly to undercut that as well. There we are. I'm happy with that. If you don't want to use your spindle gouge, you could use a skew like a negative rake scraper. Here. I want this indented though for the stem. Here. I'm happy with that. Not happy with that little curve on the inside. For our we are our own worst enemy. Sorry. We're so critical of our work where actually the general public probably wouldn't even notice. Now I drill a hole that is 330 seconds. If you like a lot of salt, you can go bigger. If you don't like a lot of salt, you can go smaller. So it's 3 millimeter drill bit. This will be for the stem. And I go in probably a 1/4 inch. That's good. At that time, I would also get my Osmo oil out. Coat this again, but not in the hole because I want the glue to stick. So I go up to the hole, but not down in the hole. So there we have our pear shape and our jam chuck hack. If we make it a little too small, there's our pear shape. There's the top with our for our stem hole, and there's the inside there. You can see the little dimple in the center there. That allows that little bit of salt to get into that cavity, and then it shoots it directly down the funnel. Are there any questions so far?
I haven't seen any.
All right.
Of course, I'm muted. Yeah, everything's been covered really good, Kate. No problem.
I still keep these, even though you may think they're garbage. I use them for jam chucks, pressure chucks, glue block if I'm doing like an exotic wood box and I want no scrap with that tenon. I would glue it to this. Or you can make, here's one I used for a sanding disc. This was from a larger box, probably a pattern I did. Attach a piece of sandpaper with hot melt glue. You have a small disc sander attached to your lathe. Okay, so they have many different uses. If not, they have a use making a fire. It's my live center. Well, quarter turn to make sure that's seated in against that jaw on that ledge. Yeah, I found I only have one on either side because these ones broke off, but I turned them out of ironwood and they worked for a good 8 months before these ones broke. I find they're just so much more comfortable than taking that metal corner in the middle of your hand.
Right.
But now I'll have to turn some more maybe with a scrap piece of wood. Face that piece. There's my spindle gouge. There it is. Now this I make slightly concave. I'll make it more concave once I get to my desired height or desired diameter. Now, one thing I do here to make the guesswork a little quicker is I use calipers and I set them to that outer edge or the inner edge of where that's going to sit. I leave it maybe a 16th proud because if I remove too much, it's going to be a sloppy fit. Now I can take my calipers one-handed and my parting tool one-handed, and I can dimension that to the perfect size I need. Or close. There we are. Now, a crucial measurement for these is you want roughly 3/4 to a 1/2 inch of room in between the funnel and the top of this. That way you have enough room for the salt to jump up over and down the funnel. So here I have 1.25 inches. So I'll make the stem 3/4 inch. So I'll make this 3/4 inch in length. That way I have 1/2 inch in between the top of the inside here and the top of the funnel for the salt to get up and around that corner and down the funnel. So I can mark that if I like with a pencil. Right around there. Oh, here's a better view. Right about there. Before I go too thin there, I like to hollow this out a little bit just to remove some of the weight. Now that's an uphill cut, but you can get away with a bevel rubbing slicing cut as long as it's not too steep of a cut. Your better cut is a downhill cut because it's end grain. We come inside, outside. My glasses are fogging up here. It's like 40 degrees outside. So, yes. Well, that's about 100. There we are. I'm happy with that. I take the exact same drill bit I used to make the top hole for my stem. And I drill right down into that cavity, always holding your Jacob's chuck. There we go. Now, ideally in a hobby situation, I would drill between 300 and 500 RPMs. In a production situation, I drill and sand at the exact same speed I turn at. But I get a better finish off the tool. So I have less sanding anyway. Okay, I'm happy with that. Yeah, we'll turn that off so it's not a whitewash for you guys. Now I need to refine this connection. I'm close, but I'm not quite there. Sorry. Overhead. I'm close, but I'm not quite there. So I like to use my parting tool like a miniature skew, and I just roll it back and forth to refine that to the diameter I need. Almost there. And you want it to be not quite a pop, really tight fit, but you want it to be snug enough You also want to use similar woods or the exact same wood, so when these shrink and swell, they move at the same rate. That's why these blanks are both from the exact same piece. Okay? So now I have my perfect diameter. That also gives me a measurement of the depth that needs to be. Okay? The depth of this little ledge here. I can double check my measurement on the depth. And I have a hair more to go. Maybe a 16th more. Ideally, you want it slightly lower. There we are. Perfect. Slightly lower. So it's flush or slightly lower. And you split the difference and go a 32nd. Oh, that's awesome. I broke the ring off. That's okay. We still have this measurement and we have plenty of wood.
You got this. Piece of cake. Twice. Twice, Matt.
If something's going to happen, it's going to be in a demo.
Of course.
It's
Without
good
fail.
to see
Always.
how we modify on the fly and still work through and finish a project.
Good night, Scott.
Here. All right, back to where we were.
Kade, can you tell us what size that hole was that you drilled? Was it 3 mil?
There we are. That's the fit. All right, our next crucial measurement is the inside diameter here. And that is almost perfect. Just a hair. There we are. That's good. I was going to make this, excuse me, 3/4 inch, right to the end of there. Now, the deeper you make it, or the taller you make it, the more condiment spice it will hold. I'll make that as concave as possible so it will hold the most amount of condiments you can. That's why I really undercut this. Take into account how much you have hollowed the inside so you don't break it off. Yeah. I'm going to take a little bit more off here. Make it slightly tapered just in case it is a tight fit. Now, there are ways you can troubleshoot if that is too long or too thin. We'll see. If not, I will tell you how I would troubleshoot that. There. I take my skew and I do a V cut here. I want this to be slightly rounded or tapered. So any that doesn't fall in the hole can actually fall back into its reservoir. Now, I'll use my skew one-handed as I cut through. There we go. So here is our little funnel. We have a small hole that's as central as it could be. It might wander depending on the type of wood. When you make these, it's best to use tight-grained wood, also wood that's not toxic, or wood that color doesn't transfer. If you used African Paduke, the color will transfer and you will have red salt in your food. Now, one thing I have here is it's a countersink bit. A countersink bit with a slightly tapered drill bit, the same size that I had drilled with. I like to use this to make a slight countersink because as long as the salt hits within that countersink, it falls through the funnel. Okay.
Kade, what size drill
Like
did you
a lot of
use on
salt
that
to
hole?
make the countersink bigger. If you don't like so much salt,
He's got
don't use
earplugs
so
in.
much of a countersink. Now, if this was not the proper diameter to fit, which it is slightly tight, there are ways that you can troubleshoot that to make that fit correctly. Okay. And it's good to see how I would do that. Okay. Now this hole did not drill perfectly centered. If it did, I would make a small cavity like so. This would fit within that cavity, and I would use tailstock support in that hole if it was centralized. It's not centralized, so what I would do is I would turn a smaller recess like this one, and I would stick this in there just like so, and I would bring tailstock support up to this because I know it's centralized to the outer diameter of this because that's the orientation in which I was turning it. Then I can refine that slightly with a light touch of the parting tool. Okay. So this is how I would fix this. I would take my spindle gouge here, cut that off, make a slight recess. Stick this in the recess just like so. Bring up my tailstock support. Now I know it's perfectly centralized. And now I can lightly refine that edge so it fits within what I need it to fit into. Now we have, oh, that's a little tight, but that's okay. We can do one more pass. You want it roughly snug, but not too tight, because if it is, when you have swelling, it's going to crack for sure. Now we have a perfect fit. But one thing I like to do is I like to put a little dab of glue on 4 corners of the insert. Just grabbing some tape on 3. There we are. You can use whatever glue you like. I like tape on 3 because I have a little bit of working time just in case the grain is not exactly lined up. Now you can see that line there. I have the exact same line here. So I can line that grain up. But I like to take a little bit of what did I say? Type on 3. I put
Yep.
dab there, dab there, dab there. Also, type on 3 is a little more flexible than super glue. So it will slightly move with the wood before it totally cracks the piece. And I just push that down and in. There you go. Till it's flush. Now we have it flush and enclosed. And I would take my Osmo wax. Of course, you can Osmo wax it at the end. There we are. And there we have the pear.
Look at that. Hey, you
Now
turned a
we'll do
pear,
the
Kade.
apple and the stem. Hopefully not as many hiccups along the way, but it does keep it interesting. It's
all
good to see how you can fix. Now this I will also keep because it will be another jam chuck, pressure chuck like I just used it, or another glue block. Any questions?
Just
Yes.
just on the drill bit size.
Pardon?
What size was the drill bit that you used to drill through for the salt to go down through?
Oh, for the salt hole, it's 3
Yeah,
millimeters.
3 mil. Okay.
3 mil, which is in between a 16th and an 8th. Okay. So if you want to be really technical, 3/32 or 3, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere's around there. 3/32, 3 mil. Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, around there. Yep. You can go a 16th, or if you like a little less salt, you could do an 8th if you like a lot of salt. Yeah. I'll face this with the spindle gouge. You can use a bowl gouge if you like. Here. Slightly undercut. Come in with our parting tool again. Straight in. Again, I need a ledge. Another ledge for that little cap to sit in. There we are. We have our two ledges. Now I hollow out the inside. This is where I need my light bar again. Let's see how deep we've gone there. And I'm at the bottom of that curve. Okay, I want to check the wall thickness. I can go another 1/4 inch deep, and I want to refine my wall thickness to roughly 1/8 of an inch. Now you can make them as thick or as thin as you like. That's just normally how thick or thin I make these. And that little dimple on the inside. See how deep that is. Yep, we're at our depth. That's exactly where I want to be. Okay. So this, I can make the tongue about 1 inch. It can hold a little more. So if you like more salt, you can use this for the salt and the pear for the pepper. Okay. If you wanted to sand the inside, it's quite tricky because it's quite a small hole. realistically, no one's going to be putting their finger in there, so it doesn't matter. And the salt isn't going to matter. It's not going to worry about a little bit of tear out or anything, but your best bet is just to get a good workable finish right off the tool and you don't have to sand. Okay. But if I were to try and sand this, I would stick this on a finger that I'm comfortable putting in that hole, and then this I can hold against the side and the bottom without it being bound within that recess and twist. Okay. Again, safety within your safe realm of risk that you're willing to take. So do as you see fit. That I wouldn't even sand. Okay? My roughing cuts are an eighth or more. My finishing cuts are a 16th or less. Okay. I'm happy with that. Okay. I'm happy with that shape. A little bit of a ledge or a burn mark there I got to get out. Okay, I'm happy with that. This is a light sand with my 340 or 320. What is it? Yeah, 320. Okay. There we have our rough apple shape. We have the inside with our little dimple on the inside. Nice finish off the tool, no sanding needed. Now we just need to refine this and sand the top, which we'll do in a jam chuck that is hopefully tighter than the last. That's where we need to be. One more pass, one more pass.
No such thing. Treat every cut as the final pass, and you won't have that phobia of making that final pass.
Pardon?
I said, no such thing as one last pass and blowing it up. If you treat every cut like one last pass, you'll never have that issue.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. It's all about tool control.
Here we are. Now that one's tight. That's better. Now this I have much more space. So I can use my tailstock support. Just going to make a small recess here. So that finds center properly for me. There we are. I'm happy with that. Now here I can also come down with my skew and shave the curve to the inside of the apple with my tailstock support. Okay. And then here I go straight in with my spindle gouge just to make that small indentation in the apple where the stem will go. Here. Make a pilot hole for our drill bit with our live center. Again, I go in about a 1/4 inch. Get my Osmo. Now the rag never gets wrapped around our fingers or anything, just in case it gets wrapped around anything on the lathe. There we have our apple shape.
Here we go. Look at that.
Any questions?
No, not at the moment, Kade.
All right.
Doing a good job, buddy. Plowing through it.
Thanks.
Actually, there were two, but I'll catch him when he can hear us.
Right?
All right, our apple. We'll have a slightly different measurement here. Oh, look at that. That's set up to that diameter. I just grabbed a different caliper altogether. Okay. I'll grab my parting tool. And I can refine this a little bit. There we are. Now I have a measurement on my depth. I have about a 1/16 to remove. "30 seconds. There we are. Nope. No need to turn the lathe off. Grab my spindle gouge. Face this. There we are. Central hole for my drill bit for a pilot hole. like to always do one small pass after I drill, just in case the Jacobs chuck or my live center kiss the end grain, leaving a ring that I don't want. Oh, actually, I'll check the inside diameter of this now. Okay. And I'm there. And I was going to make this, where'd my caliper go? That's 1.5 inches, so I can make this 1 inch long. It will hold more salt or pepper, or I have one that holds chili flakes, another one salt, another one pepper, one mustard seed.
Do you make the holes bigger for those, like the seeds?
Pardon?
Do you make the holes bigger for those, for like mustard
No,
seed?
I just grind it to a finer powder.
Oh, I got you. Okay. All right. Cool.
Yep. No matter what it is, it's normally always the same size hole when I make them, unless someone asks specifically differently. I just grind the mustard seed or the chili flakes or stuff into a fine powder like salt. And I take the funnel normally down to roughly the same diameter, which is 3/8. There we are. Perfect. And perfect. And grab my skew here. There we are. Now, where did I put my little countersink? There's my little countersink there. Now this drilled nice and central. So if I had to fix that, I could do it either of those two options I showed you. I could go tailstock support on the central pin like this, and then clean that up. Or I could turn another small curved recess and clean that edge up as well. check our... I accidentally went a little too far, but that's okay because the stem will plug that hole for me. I felt it go through. And you can't hide everything in a demo.
Yeah, it's all good. All good. All good.
So, I mean, it's no big deal.
Kade,
Yeah.
there was one question of what kind of tool handles do you use?
The tool handle I have here, this is a Simon Hope handle. You can get them in 3/8. You can get them in 5/8. You can get them in 1/4 inch. I like them because they come with the Allen key right in the bottom.
Oh, cool.
And I can quick change my tool. This is a double-ended bowl gouge. So on the inside of the tube here, I have another bowl gouge, 3/8 inch, but it has not as steep or swept back angle on it. So I actually get two tools for one. Maybe you can see it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Get down
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
So I like those handles because it's an all metal aluminum cullet. He has other handles that have a plastic cullet that are a twist quick release. And I find if it's a heavy catch or a heavy cut, the tool can twist within that plastic cullet. So I prefer these. I've bought them every time I go to England to a symposium. So that's the medium size one, which is 3/8 of an inch. This is the longer. Oh, that's great. Cut my finger pulling the tool out. This is the 3/8 inch. No, 5/8. And it's a much longer handle for leverage, nice. For hollowing or bowl gouges. And then there's one that is a 1/4 inch and it is slightly smaller. I just need to.
It's all right.
Here it is.
Someone was
Here's
asking.
The 1/4 inch. Here's the 1/4 inch one in gold.
Nice.
It's much shorter. So you can buy them individually or you can buy them in a set. In a set, they're slightly less expensive.
Yeah, there was a question on the blue one, I think. And the other question is, what do you get for a pair of these shakers?
I get 70 to 90 bucks for a pair or 35 bucks each. 35 to 40 bucks each. If they want to separate a pair and just schedule, it's going to be more expensive because I have to do an odd pair or make a replacement for that pair.
Right.
But in the galleries, they're roughly 70 to 90, depending on the materials.
Okay, thank you.
It's all relative to demographic as well, because it might be different what you guys can sell things for in the USA or what United Kingdom people can sell things for. But you do want to price your stuff accordingly, that you're not giving your stuff away.
Agreed.
There we are. That fit perfectly with a couple dabs of glue. I would then take my Osmo oil and just put a top coat on that. While I do the whole piece, and I'll do the bottom quick.
Well, Kate, another question was, with your 1/4 inch, is that just the size of the flute or the size of the bar?
The 1/4 inch is the size of the bar. So, yeah, so it's 7/8,
So
5/8 bar,
American
3/8
standard.
bar, or a 1/4 inch bar.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I believe. Let me just double check. Yeah, yeah. So these ones are labeled to the size of American sizing, where the bar is 3/8 rather than the flute. In the United
Right.
Kingdom, in Canada, we classify it as the flute versus the bar stock.
Right.
But he has both. He sells both, depending on where you're from. But that's just what he had there. All right, so now let's turn the stems quick. And then I'll show you how I put those in relatively quickly. And I have a sanding disc that I put right on my lathe here. Again, I hold the chuck stationary and I turn the back wheel. That way I have no chance of ruining the threads of my chuck adapter, spindle. Yeah, Simon Hope Tools. He does ship to the U.S.
Well, I know he used to, but I don't know if he still does or not, though.
Yeah, I know there was a time they did, and then a time they didn't, because just the cost of shipping and handling. But I think it was more along the lines of certain materials and hazardous things that they just wouldn't ship across the pond. I just need to cut another blank here. I forgot to tell you about my African blackwood material prep. I buy these in a much larger stock, probably a 2-inch by 2-inch by maybe a foot long. And then I rip them into 3/8, I believe. Yeah. 3/8-inch square. And then for the finials and the stems for the apples, I cut that into 3. So each blank I start with is roughly 1 3/4 inches up to 2 inches in length. Okay. This one is 1 7/8 inches. No. Yep, 1 7/8 inches. I've also done some where I do the same wood, but I would do a different color finial to distinguish salt, pepper, paprika, or whatever, right? So this is Schacht Vega, which is a very yellow, no, orangish type wood. I would also do finials with that as well. But in this case, we're using African blackwood, which cuts absolutely beautifully with the skew. I've cut them square, so I don't need to turn a tenon. I can put them right in the chuck. Even though I was grabbing something off the bench, I did not leave my chuck key in the chuck. So easy to get complacent and forget something, and then we create our own hazards in our shop. All right, I centralize it to the point, and I just put the square stock in the chuck. Try not to hit the metal. Close your tools quite quickly. Also, if it's not a perfect taper, big deal. If there's a lump and a bump in it, don't worry about it because stems on pears, apples, peaches, whatever, are not a perfect taper either. Okay? I think I'm close, but I'm not quite there where I need to be. So I'm just going to double check. Yeah, and my thought was correct. But it's also always good to check because once you take it away, you can't put it back. Don't cough, don't sneeze. There we are. There we are. I'm happy with that. This one's a little too long. I like the taper to seal it with the glue. So I'm going to cut about a 1/4 inch off. There we are. There we are. Okay. You can also do this with a spindle gouge if you like. Nice slicing cuts across that end grain. Now I'm down to a 1/16. And here we are. There's number one. I could have sanded it, but off the skew tool, it works. If I were to sand it though, I would sand it probably with 500. We'll turn here. Nice V cuts just to work your way down. Make sure there's no square sides on that. Now you can see sometimes I'm cutting with the top third of the skew. It's possible, and you can get a nice finish off the tool. But if you twitch or hiccup or present it incorrectly, it will be a catch. There we are. That's good for the apple. Almost. There's the one for the apple. All right, now I suppose you could go to a belt sander or a disc sander or something. I don't have a camera on my belt sander or disc sander. And I also use my lathe for sanding, so you can make disc sanding discs for your lathe on scrap pieces of wood that you took off for a tenon. So it could be from an urn, could be from a box, could be from many things. I always save these because the smaller ones can be glue blocks, small sanding discs, or jam chucks. This larger one, I had two of them. I faced this flat and I super glued a piece of cling spore sandpaper to it, and I have a disc sander on my lathe. Why not? When I made that disc, what I did was I had this in the chuck. I faced this flat. I put glue on the wood. I took a piece of my 3-inch by whatever length cling spore Velcro back sandpaper. And all I did was I took that piece, it was in the chuck, I put glue on here, set this on here, it's still in the chuck. And the weight of my chuck upside down on my bedway is what gave equal pressure to glue that evenly and perfectly flat to my sanding disc. Okay. I've used older face plates that I hardly ever use. I've made disc sanding discs out of that as well. I've marked these for my chuck. I have one. This is number 2 and number 3. On my chuck, I have Sharpie lines in the center of each chuck. 3, 2, and 1. Therefore, I can mount this back on my lathe in my chuck, and it will be running as true as it was when I took it out of the chuck. There we are. Ooh, nice sanding disc. I can take off all my archery calluses. Give myself a manicure. And now I just take these and I sand them flat and curve it up to the other curve. Just like so. Okay.
There you go.
See how quick and easy that was?
Yeah,
This is
simple.
100 grit sandpaper. So watch your fingers.
Once you got
I'm
big
still
fingernails.
spinning at 2,800 RPMs. There we are. And from there, I take some of my 320 and I just soften that razor sharp edge that goes around the perimeter of where I sanded.
But are you saying a burr was created doing that?
Pardon?
You made a burr doing that? Oh my God.
Did I make a what? Sorry?
A burr.
A
that
burr?
edge. Yeah, like with your metal, when you push it on a grinding plate.
Oh yeah, it did create a burr
Yeah,
on that
it's a
edge,
burr.
which
Yeah.
makes it razor sharp.
Yes. There we
Yeah.
go. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah, so you want to just soften that so if someone picks it up the wrong way, they're not going to be sliced open. There we are. There we are. I'm happy with that. And then I get my this over. Put this up here.
Now, will you put finish on the blackwood?
Yes, I do. But I don't
Okay.
put finish on the blackwood until it's glued. And then I wait a day. And then I put
Okay.
Osmo over all of it. One last coat. And it's done. Ready to go to the
Okay.
gallery, shop, store, teacher.
There you go. Right on.
So where is my, oh, here's my tight bond on a scrap piece of walnut. That will probably be a box one day. Take some of this. I force that in the hole there. A really great use for your depth caliper on your calipers or your depth gauge on your calipers.
As long as you don't forget to clean it off before you extract it.
Right? Yeah, you got to make sure
you only do it one time.
Yeah, you want to wipe it off. Or you're gonna have it's not gonna be so good to you. There we are. There's that one. And that was the shorter one. So I always like to, where the most interesting grain is on this, I like to have it go up and off to the side or off to the left, depending on how I feel that day. This is the better side. Or it might be which side looks better, tapered or whatever. So I like that. Okay. Force that in. That will dry. The taper keeps the glue in at the bottom so it doesn't squeeze out all over your piece. There we go. This one, that grain, or that's boring. Yeah, we'll go this grain.
The other grain. Yeah, that grain. Pick me, pick me.
Pick me, pick me.
Right?
There we are. No squeeze
Sweet.
out. And there we have our apple and our pear salt and pepper shaker.
Outstanding.
How
Great
Amarillo,
demo, Kade.
maple.
Thank you.
Fantastic demo, Kade.
Great demo.
It was very enjoyable. Very nice.
That's good.
Outstanding.
I'm glad to hear.
Yep, it was great, Kade. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
told you it'd be easy. I told you it'd be easy, right?
Oh yeah.
Good. Right. Welcome back
It's
to the
always
fold.
easy.
Right.
Great demo, Kade.
And I appreciate all the safety stuff you always put in there. So thank you, thank you.